Late one night, as I traveled through the desolate backroads of Texas, a sense of unease settled over me. The darkness seemed to stretch endlessly, broken only by the dim glow of my truck's headlights. I was accustomed to the solitude of the open road, but this night felt different, almost as if I were being watched. As I rounded a bend in the road, I spotted a lone figure standing by the side of the highway. The hitchhiker's silhouette was shrouded in darkness, and an instinctive sense of caution washed over me. It was rare to encounter anyone on these remote roads, and I hesitated for a moment before deciding to offer help. I pulled over and rolled down my window, offering the hitchhiker a ride. To my surprise, the figure simply nodded, their face obscured by the shadows. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but I dismissed my unease as mere paranoia. As the hitchhiker climbed into the cab of my truck, an eerie silence settled between us. I attempted small talk, but the hitchhiker remained silent, their gaze fixed straight ahead. With each passing mile, the tension in the air grew, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a grave mistake. I tried to ignore the knot of fear that was forming in my stomach, reminding myself that picking up hitchhikers was a common occurrence on these lonely backroads. "Where are you headed?" I finally asked, attempting to break the uncomfortable silence. My voice came out weak and uncertain, barely audible over the hum of the engine. The hitchhiker's response was nothing more than a grunt, and their eyes remained fixed on the road ahead. I felt a chill run down my spine, and a part of me wished I had never stopped to offer them a ride. I decided to try once more to engage them in conversation, hoping to break through their stoic exterior. "It's a dark night out here," I said, attempting to make light of the situation. "Where are you headed? Maybe I can drop you off somewhere closer to your destination." The hitchhiker turned to look at me, their eyes glinting in the dim light of the truck's dashboard. "Keep driving," they said, their voices cold and monotone. "I'll tell you when to stop." My heart skipped a beat, and a sense of dread washed over me. But as the miles ticked by and the hitchhiker remained silent, my anxiety only grew. The roads were getting darker and more remote, and I couldn't help but feel like I had stepped into a trap. My mind raced with possibilities. What if this was a setup? What if they were leading me into a dangerous situation? The knot in my stomach tightened, and I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white with fear. I considered stopping the truck and asking them to leave, but a part of me feared what they might do if I refused. The darkness of the night seemed to be closing in on us, and I felt like a helpless prey caught in the predator's trap. Summoning all the courage I had left, I made a split-second decision. I veered the truck to the side of the road and slammed on the brakes. "Get out," I said firmly, my voice trembling but determined. "I'm not going any further." I glanced at the rearview mirror, and my heart skipped a beat. The hitchhikers was no longer there. My truck's interior was empty, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. My mind raced with questions as I struggled to comprehend what had just happened. Despite the hitchhiker's disappearance, a haunting presence seemed to linger in the cab of my truck. The air grew thick with an otherworldly energy, and I knew that I was not alone. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my heart pounding in my chest. As I continued down the dark and desolate road, the hitchhiker's presence became more pronounced. Strange noises echoed through the truck, and a cold breeze seemed to sweep through the cab, even though the windows were tightly shut. In a state of growing panic, I tried to focus on the road ahead, but it seemed to stretch on forever. There were no signs of civilization, no other vehicles in sight, only the endless darkness of the Texas backroads. With each passing minute, my fear escalated. The hitchhiker's silent and haunting presence became unbearable, and I knew that I had to do something. I made a desperate decision to abandon my truck and escape into the darkness. As I fled from my truck, the haunting presence followed closely behind. I ran through the wilderness, my heart pounding in my ears. The darkness seemed to swallow me whole, and I felt as if I were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. To this day, I still can't explain what happened that fateful night on the backroads of Texas. The encounter with the hitchhiker remains an unresolved and haunting mystery in my life. I've since sworn off traveling those desolate roads, haunted by the memory of that lone figure and the chilling silence that accompanied it. If you ever find yourself traveling through the backroads of Texas, beware of the lone figure hitchhiking in the darkness. Trust your instincts, and remember that some encounters are best left unexplored. Let's hop onto story number 2, but before I begin reading, make sure that you have subscribed to Mr. Scare for regular horror podcasts. It was a moonless night as I drove my truck along a desolate stretch of highway in the vast Nevada desert. The darkness seemed to envelop everything around me, and the distant howls of coyotes added to the eerie atmosphere. I had driven this route countless times before, but tonight, something felt different. As I continued down the highway, I noticed several peculiar individuals loitering by the side of the road. Their eyes seemed fixated on my cargo, and they watched me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Each time I passed one, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease and the sensation that I was being followed. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pursued by these mysterious strangers. Every time I glanced in my rearview mirror, I caught glimpses of their shadowy figures in the distance, steadily approaching like predators closing in on their prey. To make matters worse, I received a series of strange messages on my radio. Static-filled voices whispered cryptic warnings, telling me to turn back or face dire consequences. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence, that someone nearby was playing a prank on me with a powerful radio transmitter. But as the messages continued, the sense of unease grew stronger, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched and followed. The voices spoke in riddles and cryptic phrases, their words dripping with malevolence. "Turn back while you still can," one voice whispered, sending shivers down my spine. "You're not welcome here," another warned, making my heart race with fear. I tried to rationalize the messages, telling myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong. The desert night seemed to grow darker and more foreboding with each passing mile, and the messages on the radio only added to the sense of dread that enveloped me. As I continued to drive, I glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone or something following me. But there was nothing, just the empty road stretching behind me, disappearing into the darkness. The messages on the radio grew more frequent and more insistent. "Leave now or suffer the consequences," one voice hissed, and I could feel the weight of their threat pressing down on me. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white with tension. I had come this far, and turning back now seemed like a defeat, an admission of defeat to whatever malevolent force was haunting me. But as the messages persisted, I knew that I couldn't ignore them any longer. They were no longer just words in the air, they felt like a warning, a sign that I was in real danger. Feeling unnerved and isolated on the desolate highway, I decided to call for help. But as I reached for my phone, I realized there was no signal. Panic welled up inside me as I realized I was completely cut off from the outside world, at the mercy of whatever was pursuing me. In search of refuge, I spotted a town on the horizon. I decided to take my chances and detoured towards it, hoping to find shelter and some answers to the bizarre events of the night. As I approached, I noticed that the buildings were in a state of decay, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Upon entering the town, I was greeted by a handful of residents who seemed almost robotic in their movements and speech. Their eyes bore into me, and I could feel their curiosity about my cargo intensify. Fear gnawed at me, and I knew I had to leave before it was too late. As I hurried back to my truck, the residents of the town followed, their unnaturally swift strides unnerving me further. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrambled into the driver's seat and sped away, leaving the abandoned town behind. Despite my efforts to escape, the peculiar individuals persisted in chasing me down the highway. Their persistence was relentless, and the sight of them in my rearview mirror filled me with dread. Just as I thought I couldn't endure the tension any longer, I spotted a brightly lit rest stop up ahead. With hope renewed, I pulled in and rushed towards the safety of the well-lit area. As I sat in the rest stop, the unsettling encounters and pursuit from that night haunted my thoughts. I never discovered who those mysterious individuals were or why they were so interested in my cargo. To this day, the memory of that terrifying night lingers, a chilling reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk along the desolate highways of the Nevada desert. As a seasoned trucker, I thought I had seen it all. But that fateful night in the swamps of Louisiana proved me wrong. A massive traffic jam had left me stranded on a narrow road, and desperate to avoid further delays, I decided to take an unfamiliar detour. The road twisted and turned, growing narrower with each passing mile. The tall trees and dense foliage of the swamps seemed to close in around me, making it feel as if I had entered a world of shadows and secrets. As I drove deeper into the wilderness, the familiar sounds of the highway gave way to an unsettling silence. It was then that I began to hear strange noises filling the air. Whispers carried by the wind, rustling of unseen creatures, and the eerie cry of nocturnal animals echoed in the distance. An overwhelming feeling of being watched crept over me, causing the hair on the back of my neck to stand on end. I checked my mirrors repeatedly, half expecting to see another vehicle tailing me, but there was nothing, just the pitch-dark road illuminated by my headlights. Suddenly, a large shape darted out from the trees and crossed the road ahead of me. My heart skipped a beat as I saw a wild bear running across the street. My foot instinctively slammed on the brakes, and I watched in awe as the bear paid me no mind and disappeared into the darkness. The figure was huge, larger than any animal I had ever seen. It moved with a speed and grace that defied its massive size, disappearing into the darkness on the other side of the road. My breaths came out in ragged gasps as I tried to make sense of what I had just witnessed. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it a bear, a wildcat, or something even more terrifying? My instincts told me to turn the car around and get as far away as possible, but curiosity and fear held me in place. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. It was past midnight, and I was in the middle of nowhere. There were no other cars on the road, and the nearest town was miles away. Panic set in as I realized just how vulnerable I was, stranded in this desolate and foreboding wilderness. The encounter with the bear heightened my fear. I had heard stories of how dangerous these creatures could be, and the thought of being stranded in the wilderness with one lurking nearby sent shivers down my spine. As I continued down the narrow road, I realized that I was completely lost. The GPS signal was weak, and I had no cell phone reception. Panic began to set in as I contemplated the possibility of spending the night in the dark and eerie swamps. With each passing moment, the shadows around me seemed to grow darker and more menacing. Every rustle in the bushes and every distant sound felt like a threat lurking just beyond my sight. As I pulled over to the side of the road to catch my breath, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. It was as if an unseen observer was watching my every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Just when I thought all hope was lost, a distant light flickered through the trees. With renewed determination, I followed the light, praying it would lead me to safety. As I drove closer, the light revealed an isolated gas station, a beacon of hope in the darkness. I parked my truck at the gas station, my heart still pounding in my chest. The gas station attendant looked surprised to see me in such a remote location. I explained my situation, and they offered to call for help. A tow truck arrived hours later, and I was finally rescued from the terrifying grasp of the Louisiana swamps. I will never forget that night, the night I got lost in the darkness of the swamps. The experience taught me to always be cautious of unfamiliar detours and to respect the untamed wilderness that exists just beyond the reach of civilization. As I continue my journeys as a trucker, I carry the memory of that night as a reminder that even in the vastness of the American wilderness, there are places where man and nature collide, and the line between safety and danger becomes blurred. I had been driving my truck through the scorching deserts of Arizona, transporting a valuable shipment of electronics. The relentless sun beat down on the arid landscape as I cruised along the empty highway. With the nearest town hours away, I decided to take a quick break to stretch my legs and grab a drink from the cooler. As I parked the truck at the rest stop, an eerie silence enveloped the surroundings. Not a single bird chirped, and the hot desert wind seemed to whisper secrets as it rustled through the sagebrush. I shrugged off the feeling of unease and climbed out of the cab, careful to lock the truck behind me. After a brief respite, I returned to the truck, ready to continue my journey. But when I opened the cargo door, my heart sank. The valuable shipment was gone, leaving an empty space where it once sat. Panic surged through me, and I immediately scanned the area for any signs of a break-in or suspicious activity. My eyes fell upon a set of faint footprints leading away from the truck into the desert sands. I followed the tracks, hoping they would lead me to the thieves who had taken my cargo. But as I walked further, the footprints seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving me perplexed and more unnerved than ever. Frustration and fear engulfed me as I realized I was lost in the vast desert with no idea of who or what had taken my shipment. Panic settled in as I wondered how I would explain the situation to my employer. With no cell phone signal and no one else in sight, I felt utterly alone. As the sun began to set, the desert took on an even more foreboding atmosphere. Shadows danced in the fading light, and every rustle in the brush made me jump. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that someone or something was lurking just out of sight. As darkness fell, I spotted a flicker of light in the distance. Relief washed over me as I stumbled upon an old abandoned building. With nowhere else to go, I cautiously entered, hoping to find shelter for the night. Inside, the building was dilapidated, with debris scattered across the floor. A sense of foreboding crept up my spine as I explored the empty rooms. Strange symbols adorned the walls, hinting at a past that was shrouded in mystery. As I settled in for the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. The flickering light seemed to cast eerie shadows, and I swore I heard footsteps echoing through the empty building. I followed the sound, but like the footprints earlier, they seemed to vanish without a trace. The night passed in restless fear, and as dawn broke, I decided to venture out again in search of my missing cargo. To my astonishment, the footprints from before had disappeared entirely, as if they were never there. Confused and frightened, I made my way back to the truck, hoping to find any clue to what had happened. Despite extensive inquiries and investigations, my cargo was never recovered, and the strange events of that fateful day remained a mystery. The desert held its secrets close, and I could never forget the unsettling feeling of being watched as I traversed the desolate landscape. To this day, I wonder what happened that day in the Arizona desert. Was it a mere theft, or did I stumble upon something far more sinister? The experience left me with a profound respect for the vastness and enigmatic nature of the desert and a constant reminder that the world can hold terrifying secrets that are yet to be unraveled. As a seasoned trucker, I've seen my fair share of strange sights on the roads, but nothing prepared me for what I encountered in the forests of Oregon. I was tasked with delivering goods to a remote location, and the directions led me deep into the heart of the dense and foreboding woods. After hours of driving through the winding forest roads, I finally stumbled upon a remote cabin, seemingly untouched by time. It was adorned with strange symbols, etched onto the weathered wooden walls. Curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I decided to investigate. As the sun dipped below the horizon, darkness enveloped the woods. The forest seemed to come alive with eerie whispers, and the air grew heavy with an unnatural stillness. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. Inside the cabin, I was greeted by a series of strange and unsettling visions. The symbols on the walls seemed to dance and morph before my eyes, creating a sense of disorientation and dread. My heart raced as I struggled to comprehend the reality of what I was witnessing. Outside, the woods echoed with chilling sounds, a chorus of faint whispers and eerie laughter that sent shivers down my spine. The source of these sounds eluded me, but they seemed to surround me, playing tricks on my senses. As the night wore on, a shadowy presence seemed to follow me through the cabin. Every creak of the floorboards and rustle of leaves outside felt like a calculated move from an unseen force. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The temperature inside the cabin plummeted, and a bone-chilling cold crept into the air. Despite my best efforts to stay warm, the icy grip of fear tightened around my heart. Feeling trapped in this eerie and otherworldly cabin, I made a desperate decision to leave. As I stepped out into the darkness, a sense of relief washed over me. However, the haunting visions and sounds persisted, leaving me on edge even as I distanced myself from the cabin. As I drove away from the cabin, my mind raced with questions and fear. The experience had shaken me to my core, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever resided in that cabin was not of this world. Months later, the memories of that night still haunted my thoughts. I couldn't explain the strange symbols or the unearthly phenomena I had witnessed. The experience left an indelible mark on me, and I knew that I would never forget the cabin in the woods of Oregon. I've since warned other truckers and travelers about the mysterious cabin in the Oregon woods. It stands as a chilling reminder that some places hold secrets and energies beyond our understanding, and it's best to steer clear of the unknown and the unexplained. The memory of that terrifying night will forever serve as a cautionary tale for those who dare to venture into the remote and enigmatic corners of the world.